Thanks very much. We have this good opportunity. First of all, as you already know, we have a very luxury panel. The panelists are so famous, so I will not give them time to introduce themselves. That's a waste of time. So we will skip that part and go directly. Today we had a bunch of like a lecture from them already. So skip them, but myself, I just a little bit introduce myself. I'm James Q from Platon, CTO. So we are working on a public chain called Platon. And there is a Alaya chain just went live on October 24th. So then we go to the panel list. Things I have skipped your self-introduction. I would like to start with the facing the audience here, if I want you to list up 3 very important bullet points, want to re-emphasize to the audience, what do you have in your mind? And also I will introduce the blockchain way of talking. We are rotating view change. So 1 block from Vitalik, then 1 block from Juan Bennett, and 1 block from Gavin. So we in turn, Vitalik, please.
So 1 block, so I guess I have 13 seconds?
Yes, yeah, we have,
Okay.
we can define it. Yeah, very
Okay.
cool.
And I think probably the one most important point is just that blockchains, and I talked about Ethereum, but also I think kind of the crypto ecosystem more broadly as a whole as well, are not just tools, and they're turning into ecosystems. And the value of an ecosystem is that the different parts of the ecosystem are meant to work together, and so the sum is greater than, or the value of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and the value doesn't just come from the individual applications; it just comes from the connections between them. And so we should expect to see the amount of things that you can do with blockchains and the value that the ecosystem can provide to just increase kind of slowly at first, but then very quickly. And we might be getting close to that point.
Cool, thank you. So let's view change to next. So Juan, please, your turn.
Yeah, so just a couple of 3 points. Number 1, hey, finally, the Filecoin network is live. This is something a lot of people were waiting for a long time, and the ecosystem is growing very quickly. There are a bunch of really, really great applications being built on it. Number 2 is that there's a lot of value to create in ecosystems like Filecoin and the other chains emerging now. There's a lot of value to create either as miners participating in the ecosystem and providing resources like storage, or as developers building applications, or as token holders supporting the growth of the ecosystem and investing in applications and developers and so on. And then the third is that there's a very strong next wave of Web3 that is just beginning now. With all of these new very strong chains that are emerging, that are making significant improvements to smart contracts, to transaction processing, to the computational model, adding large amounts of cloud level storage and computation and so on, that is going to power a whole wave of new applications, and that's beginning now. The interconnection and interconnectivity of these chains, plus the next layer of applications being built, is going to be probably one of the biggest phases of the entire Web3 movement. So get ready and join.
Yeah, thank you. Gavin, please.
Okay, so my 3 things. One of them is the thing that we've been talking around for a few years now, governance. I think it still continues to be a super important factor in the next generation of Web3. And then 2 other things that I think are less well thought about. One of them is economic sovereignty of crypto economic systems. I think it's some of the stuff that we came in with in like 2014, 2015 is that it's sort of everything together in one big house, and we think of it in terms of smart contract environments, platforms in general, where they all sort of have a degree of sovereignty to themselves, but it's usually sovereignty in terms of algorithmic sovereignty, not necessarily economic sovereignty. A lot of the times, these individual applications are economically reliant on some like super platform, and I think that's something that that we're going to start to see dissolve into the future. And the other thing is future-proofing. I think there's too little consideration done in terms of future-proofing within the blockchain industry in general. We tend to think of a solution as like that we deliver today or tomorrow, and then that will just last forever, largely unchanged. And I think that is really quite short-sighted. You know, I think it was short-sighted of me back in 2014, but I think it sort of continues to be, unfortunately, the modus operandi. And I think that we're going to have to really change our attitudes on this if we're going to provide systems that are as good as the centralized equivalents.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you three are so famous, and you are representing, in my personal view, you are representing three different universes. There are Ethereum universe and this Gavin, your Polkadot universe, and Huang, you have your own universe. You start quite three different universes. You are the director, you are the guide of the whole universe. So I would like to raise some other questions to let you guys share with us. Because a blockchain is entering its a deep water, kind of had a very broad application, expanding onto traditional business as well as a public chain. And the public chain has a very famous kind of a hot boom of DeFi on Ethereum, and Polkadot has own growing rapid like ecosystem, and Huang, in your recent like Filecoin, a lot of things happening. So the first question will be, is regarding the public chain's upgradability and future proving, how to ensure a blockchain evolves and adapts in the face of rapid changing landscape. So we will introduce the VRF, right, randomly go through three of you for the block. So this time I would like, Gavin, can I start with you?
Sure. Yeah, well, this follows on very succinctly from my previous answer. Yeah, I think it's not like so easy to address in a you know, the sort of industry that we're in, consensus systems, decentralized, and basically it's ensuring future proofing comes down to securing two different things in my mind. One of them is deciding how to change a system, and the other thing is actually implementing that change across the board, given that it is decentralized. And sort of traditional sort of second and first generation systems have not really answered either of these things especially well, choosing to do kind of these problematic, very difficult to arrange hard forks when they actually want to deploy a change, and then actually making the decision on what to change is really quite difficult. And it's so much more harder than centralized systems where it's, you know, there's a very clear way of both deciding, because it's basically the CEO of the company behind it that decides, and actually implementing it, because there's like only a single company releasing the software, so they just release an upgrade. So I think both of these points have to be considered, and the first one is pretty, you know, governance is the thing that makes these kinds of out-of-band decisions. So there's lots of like consideration for governance. And the second thing is, of course, actually rolling out the upgrade. And at least in terms of for Polkadot, we have this meta protocol concept. So basically, the Polkadot protocol isn't actually a fixed protocol. It's all, the entire protocol is encoded in WebAssembly so that it can be upgraded on the fly.
Yeah, thank you. Then I would like to go to Vitalik, your killer application with the ecosystem. So please comment.
Yeah, so I think my answer would generally focus on layer 2 protocols. So I think that the bottom layers of the stack are going to have to solidify, at least to some extent, over time. And there is a lot of precedent in internet history for kind of solid and base layers that really optimize for kind of stability and neutrality rather than adaptiveness and do a very good job of it. So TCP and IP is a good example. Many other low-level protocols, programming languages, they often only change like maybe once a decade or even less. And most of the innovation after a certain point ends up happening in layers on top that, if needed, users can more easily switch between. And we've been seeing the Ethereum ecosystem also kind of increasingly move in that direction. And like in the Bitcoin ecosystem, for example, was also kind of very early on this, though in that particular case, the only layer two that's available is basically the Lightning Network. But in this case, you can have optimistic rollups, zk rollups, Plasma, and these systems can upgrade over time. They can expand to new technologies over time, expands to support new forms of privacy over time, while the system that's ultimately guaranteeing their security continues to remain unchanged. And so I think like this is the approach that best balances people's needs for stability and people's needs for adaptability.
Yeah, thank you. Huang, your turn, please.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what Gavin and Vitalik have said already. I would probably add, it's very important to have a very strong developer community, focus on upgrades and focus on the future with good governance principles. So you need a really good standard process for creating improvements that the whole community actually wants. And I would add a couple thoughts. One is on the layering. I agree with Vitalik that over time we'll get the lower layers solidifying more and more. I think there's an important decomposition that has to happen still. Right now, the blockchains are still very complex. There's a lot going on in layer one chains. There's consensus, there's transaction processing, there's smart contract evaluation, and so on. So I think that to really arrive at something that's going to stand the test of time, like TCP/IP, like IP, we have to decompose the complexity even further and get down to something simpler. And then the last thing I would probably say is I do think that for higher layers, on-chain governance systems are really, really important. We still haven't figured out all of the ramifications of how to do that. How do you properly establish things like rights? How do you resolve disputes? When you get into higher level economies, we'll have to figure that out. Right now, we have kind of very, very rudimentary and primitive ways of doing that kind of thing, but that will expand over time with next generation chains that are deploying new governance systems that are on-chain powered. So we'll see how that develops. It's not really clear yet what will succeed or won't succeed. And I think that's going to get figured out over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the future for blockchain is very complicated. It's doing the way dramatically different from the traditional world, and from the governance, from economic model, from the trust, all the fundamental stuff. So it's a tough journey. So I heard Vitalik just mentioned privacy. So that is, I think it's a very critical part. As we know, Europe has the famous GDPR regulation related stuff. And for blockchain to be married with the traditional industry, traditional economy, etc., there are lots of barriers there. And the data privacy preserving is one major barrier. And also, I think there is a conflict with the blockchain system itself. So blockchain is considering transparency, trust, but privacy is in reverse. They try to protect the data. So my question here is, so considering this with the GDPR in mind, so the blockchain, what's your definition of this privacy preserving in your mind, and what's your view in the future of the blockchain world? How the privacy preserving will play? What is role? So this time, can I start with Vitalik from your side?
So one very powerful technology that has become much more developed and mature over the last 5 years for combining the benefits of privacy with the benefits of verification and the trust that you'd normally get from transparency is zero knowledge proofs. Right, zero knowledge proofs allow you to have this freedom to kind of reveal and not reveal information in very fine-grained ways. Right, they allow you to prove the fact that a transaction is valid without necessarily revealing what all of the inputs and outputs of the transaction are. And I mean, ultimately, there is no one, like, you can't say that like privacy of everything is better or that transparency of everything is better, because there are times where particular pieces of information need to be private, and there are some pieces of information that just needs to be publicly visible. And I think with zero knowledge proofs and other kinds of cryptography, it's becoming that our ability to take kind of very fine-grained and specific choices and get the benefit of both sides at the same time is increasing. And so I expect that we will see more of that in the years to come.
By the way, I want to ask the translator, can you hear clearly, or do we need our panelists to speak louder? Oh, okay, fine. I was a little bit worrying about. Yeah, thank you very much. So let's go to Huang. Can I have your opinion next?
Yeah, so I think that we have to make sure that we have public blockchains. It's very important that the data is broadly distributed to everybody with public information, but that we use verifiable computation and zero-knowledge computation, as Vitalik is saying, to preserve privacy. So privacy is really like security. So the word privacy is not just about keeping things secret or keeping things private, but it's also a very important property of secure systems. And we can have transparency without losing privacy and security. So in cryptography, the transparency does not mean revealing everything. Transparency means that you can trust the computation and you can trust the method by which that computation was produced. And so zero knowledge is going to be a huge, huge important piece of establishing this. And I think in a broader sense, these systems are interconnected, are international by default. They're worldwide, which means that they have to operate both in the jurisdiction of the internet, the jurisdiction of the blockchain, and also the local jurisdiction that users are in. So users need to be able to interact with these systems and be able to follow the rules that are local and follow the rules of the chain and the public system. So there's high complexity there, but over time we're already seeing these systems develop into to have all kinds of applications that are both kind of global and worldwide, and applications that are localized.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I can kind of echo your opinion on this. Privacy, as long as it's verifiable, it's a kind of a transparency. So, so Gavin, can I have your comments, please?
Sure. I mean, I don't have too much to add. I think, yeah, the magic bullet that is zero knowledge proofs is, slowly coming our way. I mean, it's still not quite here yet. It's still very, inefficient. It's still pretty sort of slow to do anything of any real computational complexity. But still, it looks like it is definitely coming along. I guess in the meantime, the only thing I would add is that there are probably there's a spectrum here, so you can have absolutely full transparency, and then with some degree of loss of potential security or some slight sort of compromising of security, you can have lesser degrees of transparency, but still a reasonable expectation that it's correct. So you can, for example, have a bunch of kind of high reputation trusted validators and send to a randomly selected subset of them and have them check things going on. You can have things like use Intel SGX, for doing, whether you trust Intel or not. Maybe it's not so useful for stuff that you expect the government to attack, but maybe stuff that's kind of relatively low importance. It can be a good solution, and we're already seeing that within the blockchain ecosystem. But yeah, beyond that, I think it's in general, this stuff is zero knowledge proofs are going to be here in the not too distant future and should help solve an awful lot of this privacy versus transparency problem.
Yeah, sounds like zero knowledge proof is the favorite technology we are going to play with. Actually, considering the recent the DeFi boom, I think that was the most complicated DApp, most complicated logic implemented and was used in Ethereum. I was thinking about if though if we want the traditional financial service to be live on this DeFi as a DeFi service, as usual, they will not let their client profile, client transaction details, etc., be kind of leaked. They will have a full protection from their client ID, trading behavior, trading quantity, all this kind of stuff. So do you have any advice? How can we get this traditional financial service onto public chain? So just one further question on the original one. Can I back to Vitalik? Ask your opinion.
How do we get traditional financial systems onto public chains? I think there's been a few problems that have stopped that from happening in the past, and obviously privacy is a big one. Like in a lot of these applications, it's just not acceptable to have just people's and customers' data be broadcasted in real time to the entire world. And so we hope zero knowledge proofs can fix this. Scalability is also another major challenge. Like if you want to have a system that operates on a global scale, like 15, 100, 1,000 like transactions per second is all not enough. Like, you need tens of thousands. And public blockchains are not there now, but I think very soon public blockchains will be there. And then there's also security, but I think the main thing from a security point of view is just like these systems kind of standing the test of time and convincing enough people that their security model actually is a reasonable one for them to rely on. And I think that this actually is slowly happening.
Yep, thank you. And can I have Huang have your comments?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with privacy and security of broadcasting that information. So again, zero knowledge will help. I do think that two very important properties, scalability and partition tolerance, have so far not been solved yet. So as Vitalik is saying, we have to get dramatically faster chains that have a much larger throughput in terms of transactions per second. I also think confirmation times need to get down to under a second. This is possible. It's just pretty hard. It'll take a few years to get there, and we need to get partition tolerance. And so this is something that I've been talking about for a long time. We haven't really gotten there as an environment, but enabling these systems to have full confirmation and consistency in the presence of partitions in the internet is an important requirement for a lot of financial applications that need to work, even if there's some partition on the internet in that moment. So high volume of transactions, low confirmation times, and security, privacy, and partition tolerance. I think once we meet those properties, we will have most of the financial systems. We'll be able to move over most of the financial systems.
Yeah, thank you. On the scalability, etc., I think Gavin is doing a lot of work on this one. So can I have your comments on this? Are you on mute, Gavin?
Oops. Yeah. Okay. I think Vitalik and Juan covered the main technical factors. I agree. I agree with that. I think we've also got some social factors to overcome as well. I think when we see laws like GDPR, which you mentioned earlier, I would say it's kind of an infamous law because it's so difficult. Basically, when the law arrived, society at large, even in Europe, which the law specifically applies to, was already breaking it. it's like this is a law that is essentially unimplementable, and so it's up to it's up to basically society to figure out where within this crazily overreaching law will eventually land that's actually that ends up becoming what in practical terms is the law. And I think we have to kind of figure that out before the existing financial system is going to be happy kind of signing off that this money that they're transmitting and into the ether, and then this money that they're getting back from it is sort of in some sense legitimate, or it can be a legitimate part of their very much custodian oriented solution. And I think until we get like them and importantly their sort of lawyers and their sort of political backers to buy into this, to buy into the idea that fundamentally no one's going to get into trouble for integrating this stuff, then we're going to have like it won't matter so much the technical factors. It will because it will be the gatekeepers won't let it through anyway.
Okay, yeah, thank you. This remind me, so blockchain, public chain is a brand new technology. We could change the world, and the GDPR related this law, this regulation stuff is trying to protect the traditional world. So maybe we need to think out of the box, how to change it dramatically. Remind me, recently there was a retired teacher, Teacher Ma had a video. I think Vitalik also saw that. We'll discuss this offline. Yeah, thank you very much. After this, a few heavy questions. I have a slightly a light question for you. In a formal way to ask it, it will be look back if you could do anything different in building your platform, which is your universe, differently, what would you do? That's a formal way. I want to change it slightly differently. So if you do have a time machine in your own universe, which time point you want to go back? Specifically, which day you want to go back? And start from there, your top priority. You want to fix this, fix that, give us 3 top priority one. So this time, can I have a Huang from you? Are you on mute?
Yeah, I mean, if I had a time machine, I would probably do all kinds of things and be able to go into the far past and to the far future and look at the technologies that are coming ahead. But in Web3 and in blockchain systems, I think specifically, I would probably go back probably 2, maybe 3 years and make scalability a much higher priority early on to arrive at a much faster, higher throughput chain first. So I think that's one important piece that I probably would have done differently. Probably going further back, even before Filecoin, I'd probably have moved a lot of IPFS deeper into kind of like the mainstream sooner. So I think we focused very much in the blockchain space, and that was really, really good. But I think if we had done some amount of kind of video distribution in large scale sooner, then we would be moving a lot more of the internet traffic today. And then that's coming, but it's I think getting further ahead would have been good. And probably I think one thing would be I think establishing stronger points for connectivity to a lot of other ecosystems and chains. I think we are a very collaborative group, and we collaborate with a lot of different groups, but I think even more of that would be beneficial. So right now, a lot of ecosystems are seen as distinct, when in reality, they're very interconnected and there's a lot of collaboration going on, but that could be even stronger. And so I think that's something I would probably shift.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's also we could consider as the advice for newcom like entrepreneurs to refer to. So next, I want to go to Vitalik. What's your direction? Which day you will fly back?
Yeah. I mean, I think like the challenge with answering this question is that like there's this kind of dividing line, and you can think of it as being a line between like technology and wisdom. And if you answer the question by saying that you'll bring back technology, it feels like cheating. But if you answer the question by saying, you'll bring back wisdom, it feels like not cheating, right? So, if you were to go back to say the year 1500, like, would you tell them like a bunch of modern teachings about like how evil war is and so forth, or would you tell them like E equals MC squared? And I mean, E equals MC squared is really important, right? So like you need both, and I think like from a technology point, the problem with the crypto space, right, is that like the dividing line between the two is just so blurry a lot of the time, right? Because the whole thing is about development of technology, and then everything is about like there's a lot of kind of wisdom in technology, and then how do you divide that from technology itself? So I could say, oh, I'll tell myself how polynomial commitments work, and how what data availability is, and how important all of these technical issues are. But I mean, that does feel like a bit of a cheating answer. And the somewhat less cheating answer, I would probably say, is I would hammer into myself more just the importance of like technical simplicity. So just understand, help myself and just understand the extents to which every single line of code you add to your protocol is evil, and every line of code that you can delete is like magic mana from heaven, and you should get as much of it as possible. I do think that there's a lot of kind of complexity that we have added once, and we have to suffer from forever. And so it's like that's probably the worst thing that we ended up suffering from. Just generally kind of more pragmatism and more of a just focus on how do we get in reasonable time to something that is much more just useful to people.
Yeah, I think, but I think Vitalik, you are the most youngest one among us, so I don't think you need a time machine to go back. You have plenty of time. Again, your turn, please.
Yeah, definitely agree with Vitalik on that. Like getting rid of those lines of code is really important. I don't know. This is a really tough question to answer. And I think like, yeah, there's like, you could bring back technical discoveries or realizations, but I'm not sure if that's that seems, as Vitalik said, too easy. Social ones perhaps might be better, but I don't know. I think the only thing that I'm reasonably happy with what I've done within my universe, at least of the last 3 years. I guess the only thing that I would, if I were to go back and kind of tell myself some wisdom, it would just be to get a bloody move on. It'd be like start sooner. Don't think about the past. Just get going. And that's something that I've maybe learned a little bit more over the last 2 or 3 years. But yeah, if I went back to say January 1st, 2016, say. Then it would be, don't just think about stuff. Don't just, consider how it could look. Actually, just drop what you're doing and get on and make it and see if it works. And the sooner you see if it works, the sooner you get, the more you innovate, the more you iterate, and the faster technology arrives.
Yeah, thank you. I think they're very encouraging. So all of us should just do what you want and moving forward. Okay, so let me move on to, I think time is flying. So let me move on to the next, regarding the governance and out-of-band decision making. At what point should, I read Vitalik's Twitter, universe force, writing, the physics law and the expectation below and the code below. So there's a different level of what should be the law, right? So I want to ask your view of how should this DAO should be governed? Which one should be the true law? So can I ask Vitalik, start from you?
No, this is I think like governance is a fairly kind of complex thing that's balancing different trade-offs, and the kind of governance and even the kind of law that makes sense in different contexts does depend a lot on what you're optimizing for, right? So like for example, there's governance of base layer systems. There is governance of kind of higher level systems, governance of just like individual companies and things that are much closer to smaller groups of people. And these things do have different needs, right? So like the more your platform is a kind of very important base layer, the more it becomes really important to just satisfy people's expectations and to make people feel comfortable that they are in a space where like basically things are not going to happen that will screw them over. Then if you go into things that are higher levels, the more you need to kind of emphasize flexibility and adaptability, essentially. And so, like, I do view it as like there being an unavoidable trade-off between those two things. And so, but I don't really see it being possible to kind of go like purely 100% in one direction or in the other direction, right? Like even if you say code is law, like there's always the possibility that something will happen that is just so terrible that people would rather just like change the code to fix it than to let code continue to be law. But on the other hand, if you just say, oh, well, we will decide every single decision just by looking at kind of the costs and the benefits of just that decision by itself, then you run into other problems, and then just the inability to provide stability and kind of certainty to people becomes a big problem. So it depends on the situation. It depends on what is the thing that you're governing. There often is even a trade-off between like and efficiency and predictability, or even flexibility and stability. It depends on what exactly what thing it is that you're trying to maintain.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I need to a little bit hurry up. So, Huang, your comment, please.
Yep. So I think that this applies differently at different layers of a stack and in different applications. So for example, the further lower you go and the closer to kind of like fundamental transaction processing you go, the more that it has to be code as law. You have to get close to physics. You have to be close to something is going to, a transaction is going to land and is not going to be later on reversed by kind of a decision in the future. Of course, as Vitalik says, there's always exceptions and so on. But then we need to build in good governance mechanisms to be able to transact at more important economic layers with the ability to have systems to establish whether or not a transaction should be changed, reversed, or something like that. So the higher complexity in the economy you go, and the kind of more stakeholders that may not be able to encode their value systems and their goals into the smart contract code, then those systems have to be able to have stronger governance tied to it. So I really see this as kind of a layered system where the lower you go, it's more code as law. The higher you go, it's more governance oriented. And then you as a user and as a creator of a contract need to decide where are you going to put in that contract and that application. Is that application going to be lower and is going to be kind of, is going to give the guarantee to users that as transactions happen, that's it? Or is that application and that contract going to be higher level and allow for the presence of things like courts and decision making and so on? We haven't yet seen the appearance of kind of like internet level courts yet. There's some beginnings of that, and there's a few projects that are starting to do that, but it hasn't become mainstream yet, and eventually it will be. Every major human system that has many different groups of people interacting and trying to achieve kind of outcomes and goals and create contracts eventually develops courts as a way to deal with exceptional circumstances that weren't encoded. So that's just a higher level thing, and it's going to come in like the higher layers.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And Gavin, please, your comment.
Yeah, I think I broadly agree. I think there's two things I'd add. The first is, yep, as you get like lower level, then I think actually it should always be expectations a law, firstly. But as you get lower level, those expectations miss the high level social context of the more upper level ones that tend to be much closer to the user. And as such, at the lower levels, expectations are pretty much literally just code. Like when your transaction, your state transition machine is nothing more than arbitrary WebAssembly, then there's no way of stating what your expectations are beyond execute the WebAssembly, because there is no context in which to give anything more interesting like property rights. The second thing is, I think that our low-level systems at the moment, I would actually just reiterate what Juan said on a previous answer. Our low-level systems at the moment are still really high level. So if you look at most of the layer one platforms out there, they still have the concept of, by and large, the concept of property, right? They still have this idea of tokens, and you own tokens, and the tokens belong to an account. The account can send tokens. Now, this is a high-level concept, so I don't think this fits in the TCP/IP notion, right? I think this sits much higher up, where we're talking about like things that normal people can understand, and as such, they probably deserve some degree of expectation as law beyond the code as law. So and that's usually implemented by courts or governance or all of the other sort of human-based designs. But I do think that in the future, we probably will push down to those lower echelons. So for example, with Polkadot and the Meta protocol, we actually do have this WebAssembly base layer where there isn't the concept of balances or property or tokens or transferals. It's just literally WebAssembly code that gets executed. And at that point, then I do think you can bring in this kind of TCP/IP level argument of you can't do anything but code is law, right? Code is the expectation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I borrow a few more minutes? I think, okay, thank you very much. So because we are, Platon is also kind of had a small big bang on October 24th, a new small universe. I think your comments are quite good advice for us to considering how to build up something new and join this public chain like environment ecosystem to kind of build something, contribute something. So I will quickly ask a few more simple questions. For example, what is the next wave of blockchain applications going to be, and what kind of applications are next? Kind of our midterm, right? Right now we are here. What the midterm and longer term? So there are two more questions to go. So one is for the midterm, what wave of blockchain application going to be, and what kinds of applications are next? So may I ask Huang, start from you?
Yeah, sure. So I think what we're seeing in this next wave of blockchains and Web3 is that we now have cloud storage and cloud computation in a much more scalable capacity. So we now finally have the ability to build large-scale consumer-oriented applications. So in the past, most applications have been financial because that kind of follows the model of the transaction processing that we have available with blockchains. But now we are finally shifting to be able to deploy full stack applications, web applications, or native desktop or mobile applications that only interact through blockchains. And so I think that's a very important transition point. So I think that in the midterm, the next kind of wave of applications we'll see in the next kind of year to 2-3 years is finally things like social networks, finally things like messaging systems with being able to move things like pictures and video and all of that kind of stuff finally can be Web3 native. So I think we're going to see a whole wave of applications enter into kind of the consumer realm. I think that's going to be is going to couple with games. So I think eventually in the coming years we're going to make significant inroads into industries like the game industry, and I think that is going to be a very important turning point for blockchains and Web3, because games and things like the virtual reality and so on, I think are going to pull all of the entire token economy systems into the mainstream. And so I think that's one very important vector for mass adoption that will be important. And I think kind of yeah. So maybe I'll pause there. And so I think like things like of that nature, consumer applications, games, virtual reality, and so on, kind of in the 2-3 year timescale.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Thank you. Gavin, please.
Yep. I'm not sure if I can name any application domains that are dramatically different to what people have already played around with, because people have played around quite a lot. But if I'm going to sort of put my neck out, then I'll say I think we're going to see like more corporate level kind of pseudo kind of blockchain systems where they're kind of using roughly the same technology, but doing so in an environment that they're much more comfortable with, and not necessarily even providing public services, but rather providing services between themselves. And I think this will feed into the much bigger change, which we're already kind of seeing, which is composition of applications. So I'm not sure if it's necessarily that anyone's going to come out with a particular kind of killer app per se, but I think that there is a good chance that over the next year or two, we're going to start seeing a sufficient level of composition, much like what's happening in the DeFi space, where you're getting a lot of different applications that don't individually solve all that much, working together and having an emergent effect of something that is much more, much greater than those individual parts.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Vitalik, your turn.
Yeah, and I think I'll add in the medium term, we'll just see a whole bunch of kind of industrial applications that just involve kind of throwing data onto the blockchain to verify that some record has been made and some record has not yet been canceled. Like the kinds of things that people have already been doing for kind of university degrees, for example, but you can just do it in like it's a simple pattern. You can apply it in supply chains. You can apply it in like a lot of contexts and pretty much everywhere. We'll definitely see the DeFi space kind of gain more maturity, and the kinds of assets you'll be able to hold will probably go beyond cryptocurrencies, and fiat might include potentially kind of stocks and other kinds of investment assets as well. Prediction markets are something I'm hoping to see, and ENS as a blockchain-based kind of naming systems are probably going to get more popular at some point. Something to do with the kind of identity, credit, reputation, that whole bubble. Like that's just a kind of a suite of applications that the existing kind of network of applications increasingly needs, and so we're going to see that be built out over time. And then we'll just see kind of slow and ongoing progress in everything else. I mean, even including the first blockchain application, which is payments.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think when we talk about blockchain, it's a very rapid growing area because everything is open. If there is any good technology, everyone can fork, can learn from each other. That's why we are talking about one day in blockchain world is equivalent to probably 1 year in the human history. So if I have the long term, right? The long term in blockchain area is cannot speak too long. So only 5 to 10 years is very long already. So what do you see in this longer term? So next 5 to 10 years, the most important technology for public chain. So this will be our wrap up question. So can I start with Gavin?
Most important technology. I mean, I think in terms of technological direction, scalability and sharding is going to be really pretty critical to ensuring that blockchain can do anything beyond its sort of existing incubatory bubble that is the cryptocurrency world. But I mean, there's obviously a lot of different stuff happening in the technological, a lot of developments happening. So I kind of, if I were allowed more than one, then I would probably say also, zero knowledge proofs, increasing like crypto economic governance systems. I would say like meta protocols and meta protocol layers, WebAssembly and so forth, are all like also super important. Networking is something that really hasn't been pushed out in all that much, and it's something that's going to have to dramatically improve as we move towards a much more interconnected and sharded future. So yeah, I mean, there's huge amounts of stuff there.
Yep. Thank you. Can I quickly move to Huang? Can you comment?
Yeah, definitely. I'll give maybe one answer in the blockchain space and one answer in kind of technology more broadly. So I think in the blockchain Web3 space, I think, very efficient zero knowledge proofs are going to dramatically affect and change how these systems work. And being able to do that in kind of a scalable way, being able to have transaction processing, say in the millions of transactions per second in kind of short confirmation times in zero knowledge, as soon as we hit that, there's a lot of technological components to hit that, but it's kind of like a single level. If we can achieve that, then we can start moving most transaction processing systems from the world over to these systems. And until we hit that, we won't get there. The second, more broadly in computing, I think that today we see kind of the mobile revolution as probably one of the most important phases in computing history that have changed the world dramatically. Being able to walk around with supercomputers in our pockets has been one of the most transformative things for humanity. I think the next single event like that, the next platform of that scale, is going to be virtual reality. I think the quality and the price point, the quality is increasing dramatically. The price point is lowering. Probably within 2 to 4 years, we're going to start having major significant changes in how we interact through systems like virtual reality. And that is going to bring one of the most, again, transformative periods in shifting how humans operate. So it's going to be very important for blockchain systems and for Web3 because if virtual reality becomes kind of like a lockdown walled garden, kind of like Facebook and so on, that's going to become a very serious problem for humanity, much more so than the current social networks of today. But if we can keep it open and public and permissionless, like blockchains, then that is going to be a very good future. So that's probably the most important technology that I think people need to be thinking about is kind of like virtual reality and augmented reality intersections.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
I don't have much to add. And I think like zero knowledge proofs are just definitely the natural and obvious kind of sister technology to blockchains because blockchains provide security guarantees at the cost of privacy. And blockchains just give you the privacy, or sorry, zero knowledge proofs give you the privacy back while letting you keep the security guarantees and potentially add even more security guarantees. So those two things work together extremely well. And I should also say blockchains at the cost of scalability and zero knowledge proofs give you back the scalability. And VR definitely important. Just ongoing improvements to internet technology and the rest of the kind of developing world kind of fully getting online, and not just as kind of passive users, but also as creators, is going to be a very significant trend over the next 10 to 20 years as well. Lots to look forward to, and lots to make sure that we do in the right way.
Yeah, thank you very much. I feel a little bit relaxed because Platon is focusing on this zero knowledge proof, etc. Yeah, thank you very much. We're a bit overrun of the time, but I'm really happy to be the moderator for this panel. And thank you very much for your patience for my Chinese English. We call it Chinglish. Thank you very much, and hope you stay safe and see you in person in next year's meeting.
你的英文很好，谢谢。
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. See you.
谢谢。